Welcome to Strung Out, the podcast that looks at life through the lens of an artist. Your host is the artist, writer, and musician, Martin Laurence McCormack. Now here's Marty.
Hey everybody, welcome to Strung Out. I am with Kenny Dark Poet Lapins, and I'm in his studio. His painting, this is where the magic happens, as they say. And if you didn't catch the last podcast, I really encourage you to go and catch that podcast and listen to Kenny's story, his background. This is a man that with art, a writer for 40 years, had a brush with cancer. Literally, that line, a brush with cancer, became something that's now used as part of a altruistic good deed doing thing that you're doing for people that have survived cancer. All that information's on the podcast, and but we have so much to unpack with Kenny, and really what it is that I want to delve into is you're in a unique position. You spent 40 years of your life doing advertising and marketing and writing. And on the last podcast, we talked about creating a hook. You're one of the very few people that I've heard that talks about creating a hook when it comes to visual art and creating. So we're going to get into the nitty gritty for those of you that are thinking, am I alone out here, in this sea of acrylic? Because it is a difficult thing to not only, the pleasure of painting is tempered by the hard work of promoting.
Right.
And so let's start in with that. As an advertiser, as somebody that's written some, scripts and commercials and such, where do you see the crossing when you have to kind of step into those shoes and say, now I have to be that advertiser for me?
Yeah, it's very difficult to break out of the crowd. Here we are in Chicago, which is a major metropolitan area and a cultural center of the world. And I am one of thousands of artists. And I have an Instagram page, I have a website, and I have maybe 150 followers on Instagram, not a lot. And I don't get a lot of hits on my website, although every once in a while I do. Interesting story there. One of the grandson of Philip Harrington, who was the first commissioner of the CTA, saw my website. I don't know how they found it, and saw that I have a bunch of paintings about the CTA and the trains. And he said, "Oh my God, I love these paintings, and I'm the grandson of the guy who was the first commissioner of the CTA, so I want to buy a couple." And he bought a couple of my paintings based on finding my website, which again I don't know how he did that, but it hit at a chord. So when you're talking about a niche audience like that, it's not gonna be enough to make a living at. And so I do a couple of things every day. I check the Instagram pages of a couple of groups that post calls for art. The Chicago Artists Resource is a website that I go to weekly that has a list of calls for art. So I've been in 5 shows so far this year. I had my paintings hanging up at a restaurant called the Mid-Coast Brewery. And they were there for 3 months. And so anybody who came to that restaurant saw my art. And I was in the Glenwood Avenue Arts Fest in Chicago.
My neck of the woods, right down Morse Avenue where I live.
I've been in that a couple times, but I was again in that this year. I had a booth with my friend who got me involved in painting. We had a shared booth. So, I have to go out actively and find opportunities. They don't just come to me. When you get to a certain level, those things will come to you, but
Right.
I'm nowhere near that again. I just started my career 11 years ago on a lark, and became really serious about it only a couple years later, and then did my first solo show in 2020, right before the pandemic hit.
And I want the viewer, the listener, to let that sink in. You just heard Kenny say, I started this 11 years ago, and then, just a few years after that, started taking it seriously. So here you are, you're a decade in or more in, and you're hustling.
I am definitely hustling. I drive my paintings to whatever gallery it is that I am showing in. I actually have a show that's opening on this coming Saturday at the Wayward Arts Gallery. And again, that's an opportunity that I found through their Instagram page where they posted a call to art back in August even for this show that's coming up this week. So, it's a lot of hustle. And again, it's only necessary if that's what you want to do.
Right.
There are people that paint just because they love to paint and it gives them pleasure, and then they give their paintings out to their friends and hang them up in their apartment. And, and again, I am not somebody who's actively trying to make money as a painter. I do have to say, though, that I have as a goal to be somebody who's known as a painter. And that's completely different because Vincent van Gogh died completely penniless and, in an insane asylum in France. And he's literally one of the greatest painters who ever lived and has had more influence on me and other painters in the last, 150 years than anybody else. How prolific one is or isn't doesn't matter because, and it's interesting because I belong to a couple of Facebook groups that have, that show paintings. And they show a lot of paintings by famous artists that I'd never seen before from their oeuvre that aren't very good.
Right.
Vincent van Gogh paintings, Monet paintings that aren't actually very good. And it made me, and Picasso too has said this himself. He only painted a couple of really good paintings that he's proud of.
Right.
Everything else is what it is. And I too, I have, 20 paintings hanging up in my living room here, but I have a bunch of paintings, on the ground next to you. And in my closet, there are another 30 paintings just sitting in a pile because I don't think they're all that great. But again, one of those paintings was one of the paintings that this guy who's the, grandson of the CTA guy bought. So, I have thrown paintings away that are absolutely terrible, but I don't usually throw away my art because, what I don't like, somebody else might.
Yeah, it's really hard to, you're probably your own worst enemy when it comes to judging art.
Absolutely.
But, you bring up the classic artist thing that we as artists kind of accept is that we might not be known in our lifetime.
Right.
We might not be known even in our grandkids' lifetime. But there is, I always quote Al Rose, who is a singer-songwriter, and he said, "When I have my posthumous release," and it just, it's the art world is, at least here in the United States, I think, is very, very tough on its artists. Don't you think? Or am I just being too soft on myself?
No, you're absolutely right. Like I said, last year was my most prolific year, and this year is literally my most successful year based on what I painted last year, and nobody's heard of me.
Right.
So, I was published in 2 different magazines this year.
Congratulations,
Upward.
that's great.
Thank you.
What, yeah, say the magazine so people...
The Upward Quarterly Spring Edition and a small magazine called Saving Daylight, which is for people that have seasonal affective disorder. So both of those magazines have published my art and interviews with me. And if I hadn't mentioned them just now, you would never know that. So, the fact that I'm having all the success, I'm in more shows this year than I've ever been before. I was just at the Zaubi Art Gallery, which is a bucket list item of mine to be in because it's a big, huge, well-known gallery. And I am getting a lot of my paintings photographed professionally this year, so I can make prints. But success has to be measured internally.
Okay, that's a great point.
For you to be satisfied with yourself, you need to meet the goals you've set for yourself, regardless of what the outside world has set for you.
And let me just tag on to that while you're talking, because you started out by saying, I kind of I look. You have like a ritual, sounds like, to your day when it comes to your art, and it sounds to me that you might even have a ritual when it comes to Kenny wearing the marketing hat, as opposed to let me put on WFMT and get into my zone.
Yeah.
So for the person that's out there that doesn't have that marketing skill, and full disclosure, we both come from a marketing background, and I always said marketing saved my butt when it came to the arts. I mean, I always wondered, why did I end up doing this? When all my siblings were doctors, and I'm like, well, because I went into the arts. And you have to sell yourself. Few of us are very good at it. So I guess the question I have to you is just briefly outline the Kenny, the marketing person that's looking at Kenny, the artist. Tell me what you kind of do in a day, or do you save a certain day for it? What's your ritual?
Yeah, so I usually only paint on the weekends. And I think that's funny because that kind of makes me a weekend warrior. The desk that we're sitting at right now is also the desk that I do my work. I work from home, and so I do the work at the same desk that I do the painting.
For the writing.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow, cool.
Right. So, this little area of the house is where I do my work. And I generally only paint on the weekends, only because then I don't have, like I said, it takes a lot of effort for me to do my job. And so at the end of the day, I'm very tired. And so on the weekends, I can spend a relaxed time coming up with what it is I'm going to paint. Usually I already know, because I get a little thing in my brain that says I need to paint this thing. And until I do it, I can't do anything else. For a couple of years ago, I had the notion to paint a gas station.
Yeah.
I don't know why.
But it came into your mind.
It just came into mind, and I could not do anything else until I painted the gas station. and it's right over there.
I love it.
Right. And it was a really difficult painting. Actually, one of my most difficult paintings that took me the longest to do, which is to say it took me more than one sitting. Most of the paintings that we're looking at here, I've painted in about 2 to 4 hours in one sitting.
Sure.
And if I don't, it's very difficult for me to leave something undone and to come back to it. And so...
Is that, that is, it almost sounds like, almost ADD in the way of...
Very much so,
But I find a lot of artists have that. I mean, do you keep lists?
I absolutely keep lists. I have lots of different lists on my phone and folders in my photo app that have ideas for paintings and different categories of paintings to do. It's very similar in the aspect of writing, in which I've written something, I put it down, I will very rarely go back and reread it and fix it up because I was in the flow then. At that moment, I was in the flow to create that thing. I'm not going to be able to get back to it.
Right.
So if I go back and try, and the same thing with painting. If I go back to a painting and say, okay, I need to do this thing here, I have no idea how I did it. I'm looking at all the paintings around here, and I literally do not know how I did these things. Again, because I never took a class, and so I didn't learn. As a matter of fact, at the Zaubi art show that I was at, somebody came by and was looking at the painting of the Baha'i temple, and he got really close and he said, "Wow, your leaves are so intricate here. you can see all the veiny details. And, and he asked me, how did you do that? And I thought about it for a second and kind of started to panic because my only answer was, I don't know.
Which is a great answer, I think, because, you know, when an artist is in the moment, you don't know.
Right. You know, and I discovered, and having not ever taken any painting classes, I'm sure I would have learned that to create foliage, what you do is you take your brush, you put it in some dark green paint, you put it in some light green paint on the same brush, and you poke the canvas like this, and you'll get this beautiful leaf. So I discovered that on my own.
Serendipitously,
I invented this great new thing, you know. But of course, everyone's been doing it for the last 10,000 years.
But that's, I think, for the person that's trying to make their way in the painting world, I think that's so encouraging because it's talking about, you know, discovering your own ways of painting,
right?
And yeah, if you do go to a class, and it's not disparaging classes either. I mean, all of us have probably watched, Fosse, Bob Ross.
Bob Ross.
Bob Ross, yeah, you know, with Happy Little Clouds and Happy Little Accidents, you know, and you love that. Before we take a break, and I'm going to just push it one more time. I think that since the hardest aspect of this is that balancing act of wearing the promoter's hat, do you ever try to, you know, create like a fan base? Do you try to keep a database of people that bought your paintings? Have you found some person that's like, you know, I am in love with your art, and you say, yeah, you know, I need you to be my cheerleader,
Indeed.
So talk about that, because in music they call that street teams, that kind of thing, you know, where the arts need volunteers, and the solo artist really needs volunteers.
Right. Yeah, for sure. The person that I've talked about a couple times, Annie Morgan, who got me involved in painting in the first place. She's my biggest patron. She owns more paintings of mine. She's bought more paintings of mine than anybody else. And she and her husband are actually funding this professional portraiture of my paintings as a gift. So it's important to find a patron and to stick with them. And I also found a friend of mine who's now a friend of mine, who I found on Instagram. Her name is Ruth, and she puts on art shows around the city in different locations. Just really just creates them out of thin air.
Guerrilla.
Yeah, absolutely.
I love it. Yeah,
right. And you know, I found her on Instagram just because she paints similar Chicago scenes than I do.
Nice.
So I started liking her paintings, and then I sent her a comment on one of her paintings, and she liked that. So I sent her a direct message saying, hey, you and I paint the same kind of stuff. That's great. And we just, you know, created an Instagram conversation.
Yeah.
And through her, I have been in, you know, 4 different shows that she's put on, including the Zalby show. So, and again, I don't know her very well. I only know her through Instagram. I don't think I have her phone number on my phone. But we know each other, and we're friends, and she'll look at this and she'll laugh and say, yes, I know Kenny, what are you talking about? But, you know, you within your realm, you try to find inroads to where you want to be. So, for example, like I said, I've always wanted to be in the Zalby Gallery.
Yeah.
So, and the organization of which I'm a part, Brushes with Cancer, had a gala there one year, which included one of my paintings. But that didn't count. That didn't count because that was through this organization. But I discovered that gallery, and wow, this is one of the galleries I'd love to be part of, and it has five stories, and you know, different galleries on each floor. And I found one of the people on Instagram again that is the gallery owner of one of the galleries in Zalby, and I sent her a message. So honestly, to get to the next level, wherever you are, the next step up, you need to put it out there.
Yeah.
You need to be the one who sends the emails out of the blue to, perfect example, we're sitting here talking right now as the result of a Facebook post that I saw from the last person that you had a podcast with, Joel Anasa, who owned the gallery Fulton Street Collective that I used to belong to. I, out of the blue, sent you an email saying, hey, we should have a podcast because I have a lot to say about art. And here we are.
It's networking for sure.
It wouldn't have happened if I hadn't sent that email. So putting yourself out in the world is the only way to get noticed. And how far you go depends much less on your efforts than it does on simple chance and fate. Somebody's going to see this and they're going to say, hey, I love this guy, I'm going to do this.
But it has to be out there. It can't be in your closet.
It can't be in your closet. You have to put it out there for it to happen.
Let's take a quick break, and we're going to come back with Kenny Dark Poet Lapins. We're doing a tough love podcast here for you artists that feel like I paint great, but why isn't anybody looking at my art? Well, it might be a little more rudimentary and straightforward than you realize. We'll be back. You're on Strung Out.
Hey, want to show your support of Martin's artist endeavors? Buy Me a Coffee is an online site that makes supporting Marty easy. In just a few taps, you can make a payment of any amount, and no account is needed. You can also decide to become an ongoing supporter. Go to martinmccormack.com and click on the words Support Martin. Let's help Martin keep it all caffeinated.
Next moment we lose it. Freedom, the enemy of those who fear liberty. We act like it's free, and freedom is free. Free for the taking. We can only have liberty with freedom. For wanting to be free. Freedom, from fear of never being free. Freedom to pray our way openly. Freedom, freedom. Look around the world today. Have we lost our way? Where is the freedom? Freedom always over that hill if we take it seriously. To live in liberty. Liberty dies in the blink of an eye, and then we are not truly free. Such a precious thing to live in liberty. Such a precious dream for those who can only dream of freedom. Wanting to be free. Freedom from fear of never being free. Freedom to pray our way openly. Freedom, freedom. we're back. We are talking the serious talk of art, and if you're an artist that's painted and you feel very serious about your art, you know exactly what we're talking about, because not everybody's an outgoing person, not everybody has marketing skills, but yet you brought up a great point before the break, that you have to get yourself out there in order for people to see you.
Right.
It was serendipitous that the guy, with Harrington's grandson that saw the CTA.
Right.
I mean, those are gifts from God, that fall into your lap. But 9 times out of 10, it's really just the hustle that's involved.
Right.
And finding people, I think there's nothing wrong in finding people that are patrons and boosters and believers in you. It's a huge thing, because otherwise you are a starving artist.
Right.
We don't live in Europe and or in Canada, where the method of promoting the arts is much more on a local level, much more aggressive. A guy like you, if you were in Europe, would be getting a stipend, and
Right.
and you'd have to wear a beret every day, and you'd look good, man. Let's get away a little bit from the marketing aspect and get into your creative aspect. Again, you're like me in the sense that you keep lists, and you keep lists for your art and your inspiration. And it's intriguing, but it sounds like it's out of practicality that you say, okay, here comes the weekend and I can do my art.
Right.
Does that free you then? Like, when you have the Saturday, Sunday, does that, giving yourself permission to paint like that?
Yeah, giving yourself permission to paint is really important. To make mistakes, to try things once, and then, I didn't do that exactly right, but I'm going to learn from that and do it differently the second time. And to let things ruminate. Right now, as we sit here, I am thinking about a painting that I am required to do. I'm part of this organization called Bustling with Cancer, and I have met with the inspiration that I'm working with right now, and she told me some stories, and we have landed on the topic that I'm going to paint. And so it's in my head, and I'm thinking about it.
Right.
And I've been looking at famous artists that have done similar things to this, and I put them in a note on my phone, so I have like 15 paintings there. And I'm trusting that my brain is working on it, even though I might not be conscious of it. And that has to be true, because there are times where I've sat down at a blank canvas like this and there's nothing there.
Right.
And then a couple hours later, it is there, and it was what I wanted it to look like.
Right.
And like I said, I've never taken any classes, so I don't know how to get from there to there, and somehow it happens.
So it's the miracle of it, right? To have that transcendent moment where it does finally get onto the canvas. But you just brought up something that I think is equally transcendent and probably 1,000 times more important, and that is the painting in the mind, the creation in the mind, where if you would have talked to your inspiration, the person that had the cancer experience, and said, okay, here's the canvas and let's go. So opening up your mind, being stimulated, probably I'm assuming nature, whatever, or day to day, or maybe even your work, that gives you that ability, right? I mean,
yeah, that's exactly right. I don't do a lot of abstract painting. I've only done 3 abstract paintings because I am not somebody who has the ability to form an abstract image in my mind. And so the 3 abstract paintings that I've done have been structured in such a way that I didn't have to have that in my mind. So the first one I did was I was painting something else and had a really dirty brush that had like 5 different colors on it. And I went like that. And I'm like, whoa, that was really cool. And so I did an entire painting of that.
Yeah.
And I didn't know exactly what it was going to look like, but I knew that I wanted to do a dirty brush painting that had this. And I love it. It's one of my favorite paintings. And then I did a second abstract painting in which I did that. And then on top of it, I put some squares that I had painted on another painting as part of the building. And that was the abstract painting that I did there. And then I have another one that's sitting right over there that's a bunch of dots.
Yeah.
And that painting, I had done a painting with a tree, and the leaves in the tree were that same set of dots. And my daughter said to me, hey, you should do a painting of just the dots. And so I did. And again, it was structured in such a way that I didn't exactly know what it was going to look like, but I had this idea that I'm going to do a painting with dots. So, and the same thing is true of my structured paintings. I already know in my head I want to do a fire station, I want to do a gas station, I want to do an L train, I want to do this building, I want to do the CTA overpass by Bryn Mawr because I think it's really cool.
Yeah.
I want to do the Baha'i Temple because it's beautiful. So I have that already laid out, which is important because again I can't draw. So when I sketch out the outline of the painting, it's very rough and horrible, and I would never.
Do you use you do sketch out then? You don't, or is that step even necessary sometimes if you are going at it, and it's in your mind? I mean, you can always correct. Acrylic's very forgiving sometimes.
Right. Yeah. No. I generally, the way I generally paint is that I will find the image. And either that's I'm walking down the street and I take a photograph of the building that I want to do, or I search Google for, hey, show me the Fulton Market District of Chicago, and give me a picture. And that's
your inspiration.
That's my inspiration. So I will either print out that photograph that I've taken and put it next to the canvas while I'm painting, or I'll have an image on my laptop or on my phone next to it, and I try to draw it out. Now, perspective is very difficult for me. Fortunately, my youngest daughter is studying to be an architect right now in college, so she often will help me with the perspective.
It's a family affair, man. That's
indeed.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and so I have that image next to me while I'm painting, but again, I go off of that because I don't do the colors naturalistically, and I can't, and therefore don't worry about straight lines.
Right.
And so, and that those two things combined, the not having straight lines and the exaggerated colors, really have become the hallmark of my style. And it's interesting to me because those things are a result of my level of ability. If I could paint straight lines, my art would look completely different.
Well, and you're as I like to say, you're cursed with a blessing. Right. And the fact that by not being able to draw these straight lines, you have come up with this really, really warm, and it's a gentle. Each one of these images that I see, they're very gentle. Is the word that comes into my mind. Right. It's inviting, and that's. Who wouldn't want that in their home? Is the way I look at it, as opposed to some artists, myself included. Like, I'm the kind of guy, like, I'm trying to get that line,
right?
And it's, But before we take a break, I just want to ask you a silly artist question: how clean is your palette? Are you the kind of guy that take that brush? You say the dirty brush. And will you let that white, that kind of, so yes, all right.
So I generally use this as my palette, and as you can see, there are distinct areas for the paint to go, and I would generally choose 10 colors and put each one in one of these areas, and then leave a couple of them open so that I can mix if I need to.
So you choose your colors.
I choose my colors first.
Wow, interesting.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's what I do. I'll have the image of what I want to paint
Okay.
on my laptop or on a piece of paper next to me. Then I will go choose 10 colors.
Fun.
And again, they are only the colors that I like at that moment. They have nothing to do with the painting. I open up my cabinet right there that has, there's probably 100 bottles of paint in there.
Right.
And I'll just look around and like, oh, I love that orange. Oh, and of course, there's purple and there's plum. And I'm going to need a green and a blue. I don't necessarily need a red here, but let's do this thing. And I will then lay these paints out here and put them on the tray, on the palette, and I will start. And usually the first thing I do is the sky, because almost all my paintings have some element of sky in them. And what color is the sky going to be? I don't know until I put my paintbrush in one of those.
So it's just like
start.
It goes. It does. All right. We're going to take a quick break here. We're coming right back and continuing along the inspiration, the artistry, the magic that's involved with Kenny Dark Poet Lapins and the way he treats a canvas, which is pretty darn good. You are watching or listening to Strung Out. Don't go away.
Alexa, play Relevant Elephant by Martin McCormack.
Here's Relevant Elephant by Martin Laurence McCormack on Amazon Music.
Everybody wants the car to go. We're back, and we had to take that break right when Kenny is starting to choose the sky. Do you paint the sky all the way down?
Yeah, that's a great question. I, again, have difficulty with perspective and, again, being an untrained artist. But again, I've done that purposely. I have taken the advice that I heard at my very first painting experience to not learn anything, just because I will then discover this all on my own.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so when I do start and I paint, there's only one or two paintings in which the sky is an integral part of the painting. One of my most successful paintings is the Owl at Sunset, and it shows the Chicago henge feeling. And of course, there it's very important that the sky is the correct color and glows out from the middle. But generally, my skies will be whatever color it is that I've chosen to start, and then I will just paint it. Hopefully, I've sketched out what the painting is, and I will know where the building starts or whatever. And so I will paint the sky within those areas that need to have sky on them. Although sometimes I do go farther down just so it doesn't look like there's a spot. Oh, you can see he stopped painting there.
When you choose a canvas, do you let's say you're going to do the Chicago skyline or whatever. Are you looking for a canvas, or are you like me, you just shopped at Michael's and they just had a 3-for-1 sale on 1 inch, and you're like, oh, I gotta get these, and now you're like, okay, I better paint on these things. Well, I mean, what's the advice for somebody painting a canvas, especially somebody that they're just kind of getting going with it? Should they go for a big canvas? Do you like little canvas? What's your preference?
My preferred size, and I wouldn't say preferred size, but the majority of my paintings are 16 by 20.
Okay.
And again, that's like you said, go to Michael's and buy the canvas. I get very terrified by very large canvases. My biggest painting is the face of the CTA, and it's a big portrait of an L train coming right at you. And it's 3 feet by 2 feet. And that scared me, just to see that gigantic canvas. Again, I'm going to use the same techniques that I've always used, but now it's so much bigger. It's 3 times the size of a canvas that I'm used to. And it took me a little bit longer to paint it, but again, it didn't fall outside my norms. And so generally my paintings are 16 by 20. Because again, that was the size that I learned on at that painting class at that first time. And although sometimes I do long paintings, if I'm doing a skyline, for example, so those are 36 by 12.
Right.
And I sometimes will paint those lengthwise. For example, I did the Leaning Tower of Niles, as opposed to the Leaning Tower of Pisa. I did the Leaning Tower
Listen,
of Niles.
man, that's a beautiful building.
Yeah.
Right near my in-laws. I'm totally with you. Large canvases, not only are they time-consuming, but they're daunting.
Mm-hmm.
Which brings me up to a question I have for you. You're like me, a list keeper and a goal setter.
Mm-hmm.
So when you're setting a goal for yourself, are you setting like this is what I want to see accomplished in a year, or are you the kind of person that's like, this is what I want, I want to be in, like for me, I was like, okay, I want to be in 3 exhibitions, and I want to have a total stranger buy a canvas. I won't tell you how I'm doing. We're interviewing Kenny.
Right.
How does that work? Is that important? Is that necessary for an artist to kind of have that pressure? Because if you don't, what's the alternative?
Right. Yeah. No, my goals are painting by painting.
Okay.
So like I said earlier, I have this one painting I'm working on in my head right now, and I'm probably not going to do anything else until I finish that.
Mm-hmm.
Do I have goals with regard to how many shows I want to be in a year? Not necessarily. I mean, like for example, I did say I wanted to be in that Zalby gallery. Which is true, and I wanted that for a long time. But again, it just fell in my lap. It wasn't something that I ever thought I could actually do. But I put myself out there. I sent emails to the people that work in that gallery, and one of them responded.
Which is nice. I mean, you made the effort. So it didn't just fall in your lap, but you nudged it towards your lap.
I nudged it towards my lap, and I think
Nice.
that's what's important, is that you do need to make a certain amount of effort. There are certainly painters out there right now that are sitting in their house with a bunch of paintings, and nobody even knows they're a painter. And, either they don't care, or they have, a social anxiety, and have no desire to actually have people look at their work. There's lots of actors who never look at their movies once they've finished them.
Sure.
So sure, I want to be in galleries and shows, and I go on those websites like the Chicago Artists Resource and look for them and apply to the ones that I think I have the best chance of doing. And I also try not to apply the ones that have a $35 application fee, because again, if I did that for every one that I did, I would have absolutely no money whatsoever.
There is that side of it where
for sure.
you have to pony up money to get in, and that doesn't assure that you're going to get into it either. That's the crazy thing about it.
Right.
Are you a positive person generally?
Very much so.
Okay.
There is a equation that I try to live by, and that is the outcome equals the event times your reaction to it. So there's an event that happens, and the outcome of that event will depend entirely on your reaction to it. So, the Zen Buddhists believe that life is pain, and you can either accept that or rebel against it. And if you rebel against it, you're going to constantly be butting up against it because it doesn't go away. Reality is reality. And either you are flowing with it or you are rebelling against it.
What would be a good mantra that you would want to give to an artist to help them get through the loneliness, the angst? Is there one that you can, here you are, advertising writer, I'm throwing you your thing, get right to it, man, and I need this in 30 seconds. Is there, do you have something like, do you have a little thing that you say, I'm just hypothetical, Kenny, you're a great artist and you're going to change, you're going to make somebody happy. Or, do you
Right.
have a Kennyism that you can share with all your new fans?
My goal is to affect people on a personal, intimate level. And that can happen individually when they look at my paintings in a gallery or on my website or wherever they encounter them, on Instagram, wherever it is. And that is entirely my goal.
That's awesome.
Is to make somebody go, huh. That's my goal. To make somebody go, huh, look at that painting. What a beautiful thing. And then walk away. And I've done that. I have sat back, I take off my jacket and I sit back and just become somebody that people don't know. And I watch people look at my paintings, and every time someone goes, and then they move on to the next, I live in that moment where they've stood there and they've appreciated it and they've formed some judgment one way or another in their mind, and then they've moved on. For that moment of time, I affected them.
Yeah.
And that's all you can hope for. And if you're really great, that's going to happen a lot, and then things are going to come from it. But again, I don't measure myself by outside stimulus. My own self-worth is based on how successful I believe I am, based on what I've decided I want to do. Like you said earlier, your family are all, in the business world and same thing. I have 3 older brothers. 2 of them are lawyers. Another one's a mortgage banker. I'm an artist, and they're financially more successful than I am. But I again don't measure myself based on that, because then I would be a dismal failure.
Sure.
Unhappy.
You can't walk in that world. Yeah.
It's like the fish who is sad because he can't climb the tree. Well, but you also swim in the ocean, and a bird can't do that. So you have to hold on to what makes you an individual, and as an artist, you have to hold on to what makes your art different and unique, and something that makes people stop and appreciate it. And it doesn't matter how long that lasts, that moment when they're looking at your painting, and if it inspires them to buy it or not. As an artist, I am just looking for someone to take one moment out of their day, and just appreciate it.
Yeah.
I'm looking for that moment. And then when I achieve it, I am a happy person.
We're going to leave it at that, because I can't add anything to that's probably the best advice I've heard in a long time, and it's advice even myself I can take. And I want to thank you so much for inviting me into your home. I love your studio. I love the fact that so much joy is produced in such a confined space. You don't have to be something huge.
Right.
You just be and do, and that's half the battle. One last question before we sign off, though. How long do you hold on to your tubes of paint?
Until they're empty.
And do you find yourself like going through like Blick or Michaels or whatever, and you're like, I can't remember exactly what I have, so
I have so many of the same bottles of paint in my cabinet right now. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
I also have like 3 bottles of soy sauce in the fridge, because every time I go to the store, I buy it again. So yeah, that happens all the time.
So you're not alone there, folks, either, and I suffer from the same thing. And again, folks, check out the art of Kenny Dark Poet Lapins, a great Chicago artist, and what a pleasure to have you on Strung Out. And we're going to be back with another show coming down the pike. And so, as always, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. And if you believe in this, you know what to do. Go to Buy Me a Coffee and and buy me a coffee. All right, we'll see you guys later. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening. For more information about this show or a transcript, visit martinmccormack.com. While there, sign up for our newsletter. See you next time on Strung Out.
It's all so wrong, this pain we feel makes no sense at all. A swan song wasn't part of the deal, was no curtain call. Given no choice, given no step.